Hello there. Now there's a word you don't come across often, Sterlingisation. But as the battle for a second Scottish independence referendum hots up, Sterlingisation will probably be heard more than prorogation was during Brexit. Firstly, please subscribe and like this video to give my channel a boost. And I'm always uploading new content, so please do check back daily. And a big thanks to my Patreon and PayPal supporters. The Scottish National Party issued its 11-point plan to force a second Scottish independence referendum a couple of weeks ago. This plan is all about putting everything required in place for their coveted second independence referendum, their IndyRef2. That 11-point plan is not making a case for independence, just making a case for holding a Scottish independence referendum. And this plan hinges on the SNP retaining control over Holyrood. So if they win the majority of the MSP seats, then they will demand their IndyRef2. And only the UK Prime Minister in London can gift that to them by agreeing to let them hold it. However, as I pointed out on Saturday, should more voters select pro-union parties than pro-nationalist parties, then the popular vote would actually be saying no to independence. But given the polling, that would possibly be a tight squeeze. Anyway, the SNP is concentrating on forcing the referendum to be held and also has some other internal tensions to deal with, some of which threaten to tear the party apart, or at least a chunk off of it. And there has been talk on social media of a stream of members leaving the SNP. But who knows? So it makes sense for the pro-UK campaign to get in early and attack the independence question as often as they can. And one early attack is pointing out that continuing to use the pound after gaining independence would be a very risky venture for Scotland. Because Scotland would have sterling as its currency without having any say over the monetary policy that controls the currency they'd be using. The more usual term for this is Dollarisation, because the US dollar is or has been used unofficially as their main currency by third countries around the world, such as Panama. But for Scotland keeping the pound, it would of course be Sterlingisation. That means any Scottish central bank would only be able to lend out what sterling it had in its vaults or was able itself to borrow. It would not be able to print money or engage in any meaningful quantitative easing, for example. That further means it can't be a proper lender of last resort, something that will be of great concern to the Scottish banking sector, with suggestions that the vast bulk of the Scottish banking sector would have to go south into the rest of the UK in order to keep the protection of the Bank of England. So this will be something that the likes of Nicola, Sturgeon and Ian Blackford will not want to be looked at too deeply until they've got the referendum angle all sewn up. But one forum has taken a look at this issue of Sterlingisation in depth, These Islands. Theseislands.co.uk says, "It stands unabashedly for the view that more unites the three nations of Great Britain than divides them, and that good relations between the various communities of Northern Ireland, Great Britain and Ireland are all the more important to work for in the wake of Brexit." And former financial journalist John Ferry wrote a piece for These Islands called "Scotland's Next Financial Crisis", saying, "With Scotland's ruling party planning a second referendum followed by a swift exit from the UK, Scots could find themselves living under a sterlingisation currency system within the next few years. The implications for the country would be profound. Unless the Scottish Government could get a new Scottish currency off the ground, of course. But that could be as equally ruinous. you might well need Weimar Republic wallets the size of wheelbarrows after a few months just to buy a loaf of bread. Now, during the run-up to the last referendum on Scottish independence in 2014, the SNP was arguing for continued monetary union with the rest of the UK so they could safely use sterling, meaning they would have a say on monetary policy for the whole UK and Scotland. But the UK government rightly said no. I mean, it would just give the SNP more chances to blame Westminster when they're told they can't keep borrowing loads of money with Bank of England backing. And if Scotland is seen as a risky bet for investors, then having those bonds mixed in with ours might adversely affect our bond yields. The SNP would probably still want the Barnett formula too. Anyway, the report quotes Dame Deanne Julius, one of the founding members of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee and a former chief economist at British Airways and Shell, as saying, "I think it would be a hugely risky experiment for Scotland." And she also pointed out that once independent, Scotland would have no credit rating history and an unstable macroeconomic situation, leading to high borrowing costs. No wonder the SNP wanted continued monetary union with the rest of the UK. It would keep borrowing costs down for Scotland. And Dame Deanne Julius also basically said that Scotland would need to have the International Monetary Fund that does the big bailouts on speed dial. The article is well worth a read, and I've left a link to it in the descriptions box below. Anyway, the SNP does have another option. Nicola Sturgeon could always nip over to Brussels and demand to have a seat at the EU Central Bank monetary policy table and then adopt the euro. Or in extremis, just unofficially use the euro and not sterling. After all, that's where the SNP wants to end up, isn't it? And that would be a case of Euroisation. But those pleasant, fluffy, kindly Eurocrats would surely be nice to Nicola and give her everything she demanded of them. Although with at least Spain unhappy to egg on Catalonia by handing full membership to Scotland, the SNP might have a long wait to replace the UK as number 28. But we all know the EU was looking for a colony. Maybe they'll offer Sturgeon the May deal to become a rule taker with no say. But Spain might even hit the veto button on that one. Now, as you know, I'm pro-UK, but there is one distinct advantage to Scottish independence, and that is no more Ian Blackford in the House of Commons. And one wonders if it might end up culling some peers out of the House of Lords too. Anyway, the canny Scots are generally highly regarded for their financial acumen. Well, they did produce Gordon Brown for us after all. So surely this question of what currency will an independent Scotland use must be central to the whole debate. Surely you need something credible to even argue to hold a referendum. Or is the argument going to be, "Don't worry, your money is safe in Nicola's hands. We'll just wing it when we get there"? At the end of the day, with no proper answer to the currency question, is it really worth spending millions of pounds on a referendum? Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it by following the link in the descriptions box below, and support me on Patreon or PayPal. So what do you think about this Sterlingisation issue? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.